welcome back to another episode of Sculpting at Home. Now in this episode I'm going to be starting to build out the skull structure of the head. I've got my profile on, and as you can see from the front it's kind of abstract, it's just this very straight line with the profile on, and now I want to build out and get an accurate skull structure so that I've got a good strong basis on which to build my portrait. And the first step that I need to do is to find my tragus points. They are these little knobbly bits on the front of your ear. They're a very useful measuring point because it's a specific point that you can find on a head, and then you can measure from there. So once you know where that point is, it helps you to build those skull shapes because you've got something to relate it to towards the back of the head, and that will help you get all your depths right. To find my tragus points, I'm going to use my measurement chart, and don't forget you can get your measurement chart along with all the reference pictures over on the website sculptingmasterclass.com. First of all, I'm going to go from tragus to hairline and just mark it on the clay. So I'm going from my hairline and just doing a mark like that. And then I'm going to do chin to tragus, and that will help me to find a point. So just going to go like that. So I know it's roughly about there, but we don't have the width right yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check my nose to tragus point. Yeah, that's quite a bit far forward. So I'm going to just use a screw, popping that in there. Same on the other side. And pop that in, and then I'm just going to check the width. There we go. So that is roughly where my tragus are going to go. Now I am whizzing through this a bit because I've already covered this in very great detail in my video course Strong Foundations, and also my lower cost picture step-by-step course A Sculptor's Notebook. So if you want to really get your head around exactly what I'm doing here, you might want to go over to the website and get one of those courses. But I'm just going to carry on now, and now I know where those tragus points are, I'm just going to strengthen them a little bit by adding some clay onto the screws. Now I know where my tragus points are, I can go ahead and sketch in the skull shapes, and for this I've enlisted my good friend here, Sylvester. You're looking very smart there, Sylvester. I do like your tie. Would you mind just turning to the side for me a moment?
Oh, yes, no problem.
So the first thing I'm going to look for is the shape of Mark's eye sockets, how they cut back in his head. And if you look on Sylvester, you can really see in profile how much those eye sockets cut back. So that's what I'm looking for. It's a very common mistake that people make, is to make their eye sockets very flat across the front, but in actual fact you need it to be cut back so that you can actually have a little bit of periphery vision and be able to see out the sides of your eyes. Excuse me, Sylvester, so it might hurt a little bit. Just gonna put them in like that. And then if we look from the side, can you imagine, I mean they might even sit a bit further forward than that, but you need to be able to have this further back so that you can see out of the sides of your eyes. Having that cut back will just help you get all your depths right, because if your eyes are at the wrong depth, everything looks off.
It's all becoming clear.
So I'm looking at Mark's picture, looking at my sculpt, and I'm looking at where that is. It's around there, just sort of cutting back like that a bit. And that's my first bit that I've drawn on. Then I'll just gouge that out a bit with a loop tool, because that's going to be empty. There we go. Next up, I'm going to draw in the shape of the cheekbone, and this bit here is the zygomatic arch, and that's actually the widest point on the face. So I'm looking for this whole shape of the cheekbone And then also this ridge along here, that's called the temporal ridge. So I'm just going to draw those bits on. So this is where Mark's face is so great because you can really see that bone structure. So I know where my tragus is and I can see that shape of his zygomatic arch coming down there and the shape of that cheekbone and then that ridge coming along there. So I'm just going to look at my picture and draw it onto my sculpt. So there's my tragus. It's going to be somewhere like that, coming down around. And then a ridge is like coming along there. And finally, I'm just going to look for that shape of the jaw. So I'm just literally looking for the angle of the jaw and I'm going to draw it on to my profile as well. So again, there's my tragus and then my jaw wants to be there. Just looking for that angle, imagining it under the skin. So there we go, something like that. Talking of jaws, a generalised anatomical fact is that men tend to have more of a right angle square jaw. So if you look on Henry Cavill here, you can see he's got that very sort of right angle jaw. And then on this female sculpt, you can see it's much more of an open angle, and that's a sort of generalized pointer. But as with all of these anatomical general pointers, there are exceptions to the rule always. You know, some men will have a softer angle jaw, think of like Keanu Reeves, and then some women will have like a really square jaw, like for instance Nicki Minaj. Now I've got those anatomical shapes drawn on, I can go ahead and build up some of the high points. So I'm getting some clay and I'm going to put it along that top bit of the eye sockets there. Coming down, round onto the cheekbone. Again, this is where water-based clay, it just goes on so quick. Like when you're working with Chavon or oil-based clay, very slow the early stages. It's a bit frustrating, but with clay, water-based clay, you can just really smear it on nice and quick. So that's my cheekbone area. Then I'm going to put a bit going up there for my temporal ridge. Now, all these anatomical points I'm talking about, there's a lot more to say about it all, and if you are interested, I do go into a lot more detail in my online anatomy course, Useful Anatomy, and it's full of sort of interesting generalizations, like the thing about the jaw. It's just really helpful if you're sculpting something from imagination. It's really useful. Or, you know, if you want to make up a zombie or a creature. You know, when I was working on Harry Potter, I had to do these concept sculpts for the Inferi, which are these kind of like skeletal zombie creatures. And I was so glad of my anatomical studies at that time, because it was literally just kind of like sculpting thin skin over skeletal beings. So that's probably enough now. And then I'm going to turn it round to the other side and do exactly the same thing. So this obviously isn't a very exact art at this stage, but it's just helping you to get that structure in relation to what you know is true. So you've got your profile, you've got your tragus, and if everything is kind of relating back to that, then you're off to a good start. Gouge that out a bit again. So just putting a sausage along there. I was taught very early on when I was working by a more experienced sculptor that all sculpting is basically just peas and sausages. So you're either blobbing on a pea or blobbing on a sausage. There we go. Now I've done the same on that side, I'm going to turn it to the front and have a look at the widths. And here we see it looking really strange, like a weird sort of pointy-headed creature. And I'm going to use my front-on picture to try and get some of those skull shapes from the front. So I'm going to look at the shape of the top of his head, and then I'm going to look at how wide apart those zygomatic arch cheekbones are, and then the shape of the face from the front. So first of all, I can see his head is extremely pointy. So you can see I'm really sort of using my profile because I know that that's where the top of the head is. So I know it's going to be coming down from there. And then those are those temporal ridges. It's going to come down there somehow a bit. So something like that. And then I usually like to just blob on a couple of bits here. This is where you have the front of the forehead. These bits here are called frontal eminences, and they create that front plane of the forehead. So you've got the front of the forehead, and then it cuts back diagonally to those temporal ridges, and then you've got the side of the head. So just gathering information really at this stage, not trying to make it exactly like he looks, obviously. It's quite abstract, you have to use your imagination. Then I feel like those widest bits want to come a little bit wider there. And I'll check my measurements in a minute after I've done it by eye. But at this point I'm just looking for things by eye. And then the shape of his face coming down a bit. He's got quite a narrow jaw area, so I'm going to keep that quite narrow. And then his chin will be a bit wider because everyone has a bit more of a square bit along the front of their chin there. It's always a little bit tricky doing stuff like this on camera because where I want to stand is right in front of it, and then that's really not helpful for filming, so I'm always sculpting off to the side, which is a little bit challenging, but I'm used to it because I've done quite a lot of it now. Okay. So again, I'm just going to stand back a bit and have a look at my picture. Like, I'm often looking to see if the left side and the right side are about the same because it's easy to just favour one side and end up with one side much bigger than the other. It's good to just keep that centre line drawn in. It's ever so wonky, my studio, so it keeps bending over. I mean my home, obviously. Now I just want to look at his eye arch looking for that top arch. It's usually quite a sort of sad shape. It's like an arch coming out over his eyes like that, and then you have quite square eye sockets. You can actually see on his face where they come. So I'm just going to search for that shape. But I'm being careful not to bring it too far forward from the side. And you can see how that his outer corners kind of join up with the temporal ridge there. Comes out. Literally just imagining his skull underneath his flesh, and it's going to give me a nice strong framework to work on. There we go. So you can see that arch going over the top, and then the sort of square eye socket holes. There we go. I've just roughly sketched that out by eye from the front, and now I want to actually just check a few measurements just to see if my framework is nice and accurate and solid. So I'm going to start off by taking the zygomatic arch width measurement. I feel like that's a weeny bit baggy there, so I'm just going to add a tiny bit more. And then I'm going to check the widest skull. So that's going to be above his ears there. That's quite a bit baggy, so quite a bit to add there. How's that? Yeah, that's looking about right. And now I'm going to check the widest jaw. So, okay, I feel like that's a little bit under. So, just going to carefully add a bit more on there. But don't want to lose that nice long feeling of his face. Yeah, that's about right. And finally, just the eye socket width. I always find that as a very useful measurement. I think I could probably add a tiny bit more onto that. So look at how those sides of the eye sockets are really quite vertical. So you've got the arch along the top, vertical sides, and then they become these sort of almost square holes. Yeah, it's looking better. Oh, that must be my question hotline. Must be Fernando. Hello, Fernando. Amelia speaking. Oh, sorry, what? Okay, calm down, calm down. What is it? Not in your contract? No, well, we didn't know how this was going to go, did we? But okay, fine. That's fine. You don't have to be on set. Don't worry. Okay, I'm hanging up now. Well, we've had a question in from Mike Garvey, and he wanted to know if he was going to get to meet Fernando, but Fernando is very shy and he does not want to be on set. So I'm afraid that you will not be meeting Fernando in this series. So yeah, sorry about that. Okay, so as you can see, I've finished sketching out Mark's rough skull shape, and I've just been working from the front photo and the profile photos, and then checking what I've done by eye by checking my measurements. In the next episode, who knows? No, not who knows, whose knows, his nose. So if you have any questions for me, please just pop them in the comments. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to see any of our existing courses, head on over to sculptingmasterclass.com. And I'll see you in the next episode.